The third one on the list is adjust the travel and accommodation rules and policies for ministers and parliamentarians. So there again, how can we reduce the amount of people that travel? How can we reduce the expenses that we as ministers, or parliamentarians, but we as ministers first and foremost need to show the example. And how can we reduce those expenses? Now, and I'm going to go down the list, but on the whole, if you look at all these things that we're talking about, they may not make a tremendous difference in the scheme of things when we're talking 200 million guilders shortage, but it's a start. I mentioned last time about the half-liter bottles of water. We have a half-liter bottle of water, and every time we leave half the bottle, we throw away half a liter of water. That's a waste. So if we deal with all these little items and save $1 here and save $1 there, we may make a difference ultimately. We're talking about, we've suggested also a reduction in the salaries of our parliamentarians. And again, they are our bosses basically, so there we need their approval. We have asked them to take a look at it and ask that they come back and tell us what they think. So the point I'm trying to make is that when all the employees feel of government that that they're going to be affected, it's from top to bottom. And I'd like to make another statement here. The private sector on September 7th immediately felt the impact of Hurricane Irma. And I say that because every business got affected. Every business got affected in a different way. Some were destroyed. People are out of work there. Some were half destroyed. So the people lost, half the people lost their jobs, or an arrangement was made. As you know, I come from the private sector, and the company that I was involved with before I became a minister, immediately we invited our employees at the time to come to a meeting. And we talked about how we're going to go from here, because there was so much devastation around us. And the first thing that everybody said, well, do we still have a job? Are you going to stay open? And the answer was, look, let's do this thing together. We either try to make it together with less, each of us, or we end up having to close down or to let go some people. And the offer was what we can see from our reserves and how we can go about it. We don't know how long we're going to be closed. We offer you 50% of your salary, but we can't force you. So by law, we can't reduce your salary, but we can ask you to work with us. And I was very proud that every one of the employees immediately said, sure, for us to save what we got, we need to give back something now to make sure that we can last. And so everybody went on 50% of their salary, including the managing director at the time. The business that I was in happened to be automotive related, and everybody knows that a lot of cars got damaged. So it was relatively short time when we saw business coming back and coming back faster and bigger because of the amount of damage. So the automotive industry, I think, kind of got a boost from Irma in certain cases because of the type of business it was in, just like construction companies have the same situation. But we have hotels that are still closed. We have hotels where people lost their work or went to 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. We have businesses on Front Street that were closed immediately. We have so many people in the private sector that lost their income immediately.
SXM, connecting you.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
And therefore, first of all, I'm very happy and also very pleased that I collaborated and worked with the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport on advices that have been written and have already been signed off by the Ministry for the use of the advance payment that we have received for the insurance disbursements funds to indeed begin the first emergency repairs to several schools. We've adjusted the scope of work somewhat in order to maximize the use of the funds that were allotted to us, and therefore the works and the priority works will focus on the repairs to the parameters of the schools and therefore include repairs to doors, windows, electrical work and roofing. That caused a slight delay as we therefore adjusted some of those invoices in order to reflect such and have the accurate amounts also allocated. We will distinguish two groups: funds directly transferred to subsidized schools, with then the obligation and the responsibility of those schools to report to us on a regular basis on the progress made in order to ensure the completion of the work prior to the hurricane season. Now, the process, of course, for the public schools will be slightly different because we have to ensure that we relate to matters related to the requirements of the terms of reference and the public bidding, so that will require a different type of process. So both will be addressed. First of all, and therefore the schools through an incidental additional subsidy, and the public schools will be tackled differently as well. And I look forward to conclude that advice and present it to the Council of Ministers for decision making. Second highlight that I would like to, of course, bring forward is that we will have a meeting with the insurance company that handles all related matters of insurances for the government, including the schools, including sports facilities, including cultural organizations. We've highlighted sensitivities and I therefore requested for a meeting that will be held this week Friday with those stakeholders to review possibilities to already upgrade the existing policy to avoid that, for instance, content matters of the policy are underinsured, as we, for instance, received quite some goods via the Netherlands recently, and we have to ensure that that is included in the upcoming for the upcoming season. Another highlight is that the Department of Education, in collaboration with various school boards, community stakeholders, and with the technical support from the UNICEF Netherlands, has developed a safety and emergency response guidelines for schools plan. The document is in its final stages of conclusion and to then be forwarded to my office for decision making. This plan is being established to equip schools with a framework to develop their and improve their individual safety and emergency response plans. And I've mentioned that when I started in January, to ensure that we complete a framework first in the first quarter, and that we can then also ensure that those that framework can be detailed by the individual schools, and it can also be practiced and trained through drills to ensure that teaching staff, school managers are familiar and acquainted with the plans as put on paper. Because sometimes you can say you can have it on paper, but then to really activate it and use it accordingly, that requires some additional training. So I'm very pleased with that, and I would like to also thank the Department of Education for the advances made. I would also like to thank UNICEF Netherlands for their assistance in the development of that framework. I now will, of course, take a closer look of how we can enforce the usage of such a framework, and I believe it's best to be enforced as a mechanism on a yearly availability of the subsidies. Once it can be included as a requirement, we can also then use and ensure that those schools will act accordingly in the interest of our children on island. The guidelines represent one part of the development of an emergency response policy for the educational sector, as described in the Ministry's Resilience Plan, which of course was created after Irma to ensure that the education sector will be more effectively prepared to respond to and recover from disasters and crises. The Safety and Emergency Response Plan lays out a number of quality standards and procedures for safety preparedness and emergency response within the St. Maarten schools. Each school, then in return, will be required, in addition to developing their own personalized school safety and emergency plan, will be therefore then required to set up a team, a response team, with the critical selected coordinators for contact persons, for instance. This school emergency plan will be team will be responsible for establishing a warning system in the school, creating awareness of safety within the school, and keeping updated contact lists for medical support professionals when necessary, and ensure that first aid equipment is maintained, amongst other tasks. So those type of things are a clear signal that we are taking indeed the impact of Irma last year serious, and it should translate in immediate improvements.
People all across St. Maarten are switching to a more rewarding experience. The WIB MasterCard Fun Miles credit card, better known as My Card. Earn 1 Fun Mile for every $2 spent, even abroad and online. This will quickly get you a ton of Fun Miles to redeem for travel, shopping, food, fuel, and much more. But there's more to My Card. Worldwide acceptance, an EMV chip for extra security, and 250 free Fun Miles with first use. Switch to My Card today at WIB.
Fun miles, from within your reach.
Tell them, connecting you.
Bearing in mind the consequences of Irma, do you envisage any mandatory evacuation for the really high-risk areas like sandy ground?
So as I said, we put in place a certain amount of preparation concerning the shelters. As we did for Irma, we had a transportation policy that we put in place also, and we will be in convention. We will sign conventions MOUs with certain operators to be sure that we will have and we will be working with a certain amount of people to be able to carry, I would say, the population to the different shelters that will be reserved for them. We did it before Irma. We're going to amplify it. Madame la Préfète emphasized in the fact that for Irma, we had a small success because the buses sometimes were leaving empty. And this is the reason why we want to have a communication early enough so the population would know that in each district there will be a point that will be assigned where a bus will be waiting for those who needs it, carrying the population from that point to one of the shelters that will be organized for it. What I forgot to mention is that we are trying to augment, to triple our capacity of shelters in terms of place. We have the objective to go to 1,700 places, I would say reserve areas, not areas, but shelters can hold a capacity of 1,700 person. Of course, for the long term, according to our population of 36,000 inhabitants, we want to augment that capacity to 3,000 to 3,005. And as Madame la Préfète mentioned, the second phase of the preparation for the following years will be a preparation where we will be working on 3 different shelters as bunkers that can be used in different, I would say, situation, whether it's hurricane, whether it's tsunami, which we often forget, but also the flooding situation. Of course, those shelters will be able to be operated in different circumstances to be used in the best interest, but need to be also equipped with generator and having an oversight budget enough to be able to provide the first necessity, which is the kit of security for injuries, kit for first alimentation, and of course water and dry toilets for the areas that won't have a cesspool with those kind of facilities. Of course, generators, and for the systems that are in those schools or those areas that are functioning, make sure that they are in action so that we can provide as much comfort to our population that will be in those situations.
What is it costing you to make all of these plans?
It's costing us on the first type in our budget. We are putting an envelope of 1.7 million to be able to secure, to be able to organize. Euros. Euros. Yes.
Just to make it clear.
Yes. No. Euros.
I'm going to put your government in any debt because things change sometimes. So.
Well, I'm voting on the 12th of April. I'm voting the budget of the collectivité for 2018, and that budget, those figures are organized and I would say pointed for that specific issue. We have schools that we need to put back together because we need to do a September back to school in the best conditions. We promise it to the population. No matter what we receive as funding, we make it our priority to base the reparation, to base the securitization of those areas in those schools. So of course, if there's any event, such a natural event such as hurricane, we will use those shelters, those areas as shelters, because they will be reinforced. And we would make sure that it is a maximum security, again, because we will have engineers checking all those areas before we give the list of those different shelters.
It's been said that behind every door, possibility awaits. How much possibility depends on which door you open first. Every day, we help our customers discover the possibilities in their lives. It all starts with a conversation. Scotiabank. Discover what's possible.
We had an issue, and not that I want to go back to that specific incident, but we had an issue where a child went missing after the child left school without the proper, basically it was not without the proper procedure. The child just walked out and left school, and we then found invitation was extended to 2 teachers from that specific school. Now, as a union, I represent the teachers, so the teachers asked for me to go to the department with them at that meeting. They were called for a meeting, and the only purpose of that meeting was to hand them a letter and have them sign for this letter. This type of procedures is unheard of. They were not allowed to say anything, to ask any questions, and they were told that they had the rights to respond in 7 days. Why I'm bringing this issue forward? Because I noticed that with another teacher's issue at another school, the Minister of Education came and cleared the air on that, and they found that the teacher was, acquitted. In this case, the letter was actually containing a warning and for both of the teachers, and I know that other persons was calling, but they did not choose to come forward to the union. The union, on behalf of these members, we felt that this was unjust and uncalled for, and we reacted on behalf of the members. And last week, we received an email and hand-delivered answer where the head of public education felt that she can imagine the feeling of our teachers, but wants to now explain to the union that we must, tell the teachers about teamwork, etc. I find that was rather insulting, and still besides the point. It is not dealing with the issue, because occupational health and safety of the students rests with DPS. The school board, or the one in charge, they took a decision together with the ministry to reopen schools after Irma with all the fencing as such being damaged. And we had, in our capacity as unions, we find that we had enough time. We had the Marines were here on St. Martin, that those fences should have been put up. Up to today, those fences, if you go to most of the public schools, Barry Genevieve the Weaver, you go Martin Luther King, you go to the Lionel Corner, you would see that the fences are still down, they are still broken. That minimum repair was not done. Holding in account and knowing the class of the type of difficulties you can encounter with the students. I would like to stress that at no time I don't feel a teacher's job is, if a child walks through the door and the child can be rude and mannish enough to walk off the premises of the school without permission, that a teacher should be running behind of that child to get. One of the things that the teacher's task is to notify management, notify the office of this fact, what happened, and the office is the one, the manager is the one that should notify the parents. Whatever went wrong in this story, I am not here to say whether this was wrong, yes or not, but what I am here to say, representing my teachers, that I feel that DPS is wrong totally wrong. Instead of bringing a meeting together where now you would discuss ways and means to avoid a reoccurrence, the teachers are being put into a warning, a type of warning letter, whereas we had the fact of one teacher being sick. So this other teacher with her task already cut out, which was testing of some children in the subject that she teach, she was asked to put an eye on the children because she was told that they already had work on the board, which means the supervision of these children together with her task, that's to show you DPS should recognize that that cannot continue. They would have to go into having substitute teachers available instead of assuming their responsibility. A person that had to now take a double load is not being even rewarded, it's being slapped on the wrist. Well, as a union, we have different things that in the future, in case the DPS did not do in the future, we know the teamwork that we can teach our members so that they would not have to get any type of warning letters in the future, because basically it is unfair. And this is all the time it is happening within the government apparatus also.